everybody, this is Doyle, and that's AC. And this is AC and me still. That's our running title.
We'll come up with something better eventually.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. But today we're going to be talking just a little bit about con experience. I got to recently work a con with AC over the weekend. Hey, if you've never been to one, what you can kind of expect when you go to one. Budget, I'll say right off the bat. Put a budget in place. You will spend more money than you want to. But also just how he got into it, what his thoughts are on it. You know, he's been doing it at least, successfully to some degree for quite a while since I've known you. So just in case you guys want to potentially dive into the space yourself, or you've been thinking about it, maybe you've been doing art for a while, or have something you want to push in that direction, maybe this can be like a very beginning of kicking off knowledge. Yeah, how you doing, AC?
Doing great. Doing great. And thanks, Doyle, for helping me out at the convention. Was it just last week? I think it was just last weekend.
Yeah. The Wicked West.
The first one in Loveland, Colorado, run by some very nice people who are very considerate of the people who work there. And there were definitely some advantages at this con that you don't get at other cons, like electricity is free. That's just a huge one. Charging your phone so that you can take payments.
It sounds so ridiculous when you say that.
I know.
That they would ever charge you.
Man, like you go to the bigger cons, and I'm not going to name names on this one. You know what? I will because it's not a disparaging statement. It's a fact, and it's something that you have to think of when you're budgeting to be an artist. So at Colorado Springs Con, which, by the way, fantastic show. I love it. I always make tons of money there. I always get to see a ton of great people, fellow artists, people who live locally, people who come from other nearby states to go to that. The people who run it are terrific and bend over backwards to help you out. And whenever Tim and I ask to have tables next to each other, they do that for us to make life easier. But there are costs associated with it. And I know that a lot of these places, when I asked, they said that they don't control that. It's the venue and the property management company that says, if you want certain features, you have to pay for them, such as electricity. And it was $100 for 3 days to have electricity at your table. And for some people, that is totally worth it. There are some people that they really wouldn't be able to survive without it. I was trying an experiment because I had a monitor, hooked it up to my laptop, and I was basically doing demonstrations. So I'd draw on, not a laptop, it was the iPad Pro. I would draw on the Pro, I had it hooked up through an HDMI to the monitor, and you could see what was happening on there. You could see me live drawing as you were passing by. That also has different benefits depending on where you're located. I was on an end cap, so that was great, a lot of traffic coming by. But if you're on the inside of an aisle, you got to have that high up somehow, or else people can't see it. So $100 for electricity for 3 days on top of what I paid for the table. And I will just say that was within a few bucks of what Denver Comic-Con charges an artist for a table. So $400 already in the hole. Now, in previous years, sometimes I will do an Airbnb in Colorado Springs because it's a little over an hour drive from where I live. And at the end of a long day, sometimes it's nice to go and hang out with friends who live down there. There's some after parties. There are, you and the Thinking Outside of Longbox people have been at some of the after parties there and even had podcasts there. And so there's stuff like that you want to do, and it keeps you up kind of late. And at midnight or 1 a.m, and you're thinking, I got an hour drive home and then an hour drive back to be here by 9 for the VIPs that start at 9, that are allowed in at 9 instead of at 10 with a general admission. It really cuts into your sleep. So if you get an Airbnb, if you stay at a hotel, and that's that you can get discounted hotel rates, but nothing makes it cheap enough that it's a decision like that you can make, especially for an artist. Now, vendors that have a ton of tables that sell thousands of dollars of merchandise all weekend, it's a different story. If you're an artist trying to get your name out there, you're trying to show off your new book, you're trying to get noticed by someone in the industry, you're probably not already a well-off artist if that is how you're getting into it. So the more things that you pile on, the more of a barrier it becomes. And if you try to do cons more than once a year, if you're going to do it once a year and, go all out and stay somewhere nice and all that fun stuff, stay an extra day in town, great. But if you're trying to get your book out and all the other benefits of it, you have to go to multiple cons. These costs add up, and not every con is going to make you money, especially at the beginning. You're going to have some good ones, you're going to have some bad ones. But the electricity, man, like, if your phone goes out and that's how you take payments through Square, you can only take cash. Or you hope that one of your buddies can take it on their Square payment and then you settle up later, which has happened. But I only do that with Tim because Tim and I trust each other. And
that
we would never.
So insane to me. Like, not that A, the cost does, but B, so for something I won't mention here, but we talked a little bit about it at the time. I've already reached out to a few venues just to check. And I have asked about things like internet and electricity. And so far, of the handful that I've asked, none of them have told me those would be extra charges, that it was already included in the payment of the facility. But B, if it was, how can you justify charging a person at a table $100 for 3 days to basically charge their phone, maybe run a monitor?
Take payments.
You're talking about a literal expense of maybe a couple bucks to their electric bill at that.
Yeah. And with that many people, it also disperses the cost a bit too. But, either A, property management sets down the rules and that's the fact of it, and I don't know any better or beyond that, or B, that's what people are told in the convention.
Yeah.
That maybe don't know at the upper levels that that's not really what's going on, and this is just what they're told and what they believe and what they pass on.
And I haven't checked with every venue, I'm making that clear. So clearly there could be venues that do charge, but even then, man, I can't imagine that there's a way to figure out an overall fee and then break that up and just include in the table cost or something,
Man, and then if you're one of the big vendors, you might have to, depending on the place. Sorry, it's a little cold in the basement.
It's fine.
Depending on the place, you might have to get union people to bring your stuff in, and I don't know if there's a cost for that because I've never used it, but I've never needed to. My setup is such that I can carry it myself, or one or two people can haul it in a couple of trips, no big deal. But one time at Denver Comic-Con, I tried bringing in, I've got a job box made by Husky, and it's big and has wheels on the bottom, and I was going to roll that in with all my stuff in. And they said, you can't bring something with wheels across the floor. I already had it there, so me and my buddy Richard picked it up and put it on our shoulders and carried it like Pharaoh is carrying a sarcophagus, or the servants of a Pharaoh carrying a sarcophagus. Yeah. And only because we were strong enough to do that, we got it the long distance from the door to the convention hall to our table. So, yeah, I guess, they don't want damage, but if you're going to, some rules need to be more of a case by case basis. And I know it's easier to not do it that way. It's easier to just say no. But
I can't imagine wheels damaging a floor, little rubber wheels.
They're rubber so that they don't, right? But they might leave marks, and I guess they don't want to clean the marks. Mine were plastic. So,
real quick, just because it's something I'm noticing. Is there any way to rig your mic part so it's not hitting your jacket? Because I know it makes a scrunchy noise.
There we go. Sorry about that.
On our first video. I don't notice it that much, but one's like, there was like a lot of scrunchy. So,
Yeah, it hits the zipper and then it like, because it's down here.
yeah.
Freaking Apple. But I should invest in earbuds. I just figure I'd lose them. So I like old tech.
We will take care of it. We will get you show earbuds.
One of these days, or I'll get some like, I don't know, sound dampening in my basement and use my Yeti microphone, and then put a pop filter. There's a lot of things that could happen, but this plugs into my phone, so
it's a quick option. I get it.
So other things, unexpected costs at venues. Well, you're paying for food and you're not getting a discount there. I've never been to a convention where you get a discount as a vendor for food. Now, I have been, Landmark has a mini con. Landmark, I think it's elementary, Landmark Academy in Commerce City. They host a mini con every year. And they didn't do it the same this year because they were at a county rec center. And so there was more space, but it was a little different. In previous years, it was in a school, in the gymnasium, and in one or two of the classrooms, they had like, you could go in there and have snacks as a vendor or an artist. There's not only no cost for us to do it because they were glad to have us there and to have the kids involved in a convention and to learn how these things work. They gave us like, fruit and granola bars and sodas, and there were like free comics you could pull from just for like, here's some stuff people donated, have some, the rest are prizes, but you guys are, we're glad you're here, have some. There are places that will give you like some kind of swag bag or something as a thank you for being a vendor. There are places that used to do it for just paying your ticket. And that seems to all have been diminished a lot lately, stripped down to the most bare, like you are coming into a mall that happens to be of stuff that you like. And I'm not saying Wicked West or Colorado Springs or anything like that. Those are very good environments. And like I said, like the people that run them are terrific. But I have been to cons that's what it feels like. It's not there to show any appreciation or help or do anything in favor of the people that are paying to have a table at your show and are making it so people will show up. I mean, I'm not exactly a big deal by any stretch, but I have people that come and see me at shows. I have people that like my art, and when I say I'm going to be, at whatever con this week, they'll come and check it out, and they'll come and say hi, and sometimes they'll pick something up, but it's a person that wouldn't have been there that is now there, and if they find something else they like, they've just added to the whole experience for someone else.
But you also represent a collective. Like, there's people come to cons for different reasons. Some people I know come for panels. Some people I know come for special guests. I've never been one of those people. When I just go to a con, I'm always the person that's there to buy like weird shit or cool art or comic books. So the collective of comic book vendors, artists, random shit makers, that's why I go to the con. And there are other people just like me. And just because they might not be there to see you, there are people there that are only there because your collective is there, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
so
agree, totally.
It's super weird that group gets treated differently than the other group. I think I understand that too, just because of my normal job. For some reason, my department is considered a cost. I forget how they worded it. I've been to meetings, but they consider like fab and all these other things as like making the company money, but shipping costs the company money. And I'm like, how do you figure? Like, if they don't leave the plant, how are you making any money?
It's the cost of doing business. Like, you're paying rent on the, do you look at your rent as a negative, or do you see it as something that has to happen just to exist? Like,
see the weird shit, people. This is why I go to cons. or
Cthulhu or Cthulhu. Yeah, I mean, I'll say this: Doyle had people come and buy our table trying to steal that. Good-naturedly, not really, but that's the kind of stuff you only get this at a con where some creative person had an idea and had the time to do it, and after they made all of their standard, this is what random, 90% of people who come here will be interested in buying. They do their niche thing, the thing that makes them happy, the wacky idea they had, just to see what happens. And that experimentation and that thinking outside of the box and looking in different avenues that are off the beaten path, something beyond the mainstream. That's you get all of that at a convention, which is why I love it.
It's true. It's my favorite part of them, in all honesty. Every time I go to a panel, too, I'm like super bored, and that could be because I'm like, I actively look for information on people that I like already. So like, if they've given like talks or whatever, or written books or done podcasts, I've probably heard those things already. So it's like every time I went to Kevin Eastman's panel at Colorado Springs Comic Con, I think last time. And not that he's not interesting or that the turtles aren't interesting, but it was just questions that I already knew the answers to and stuff that I've already heard him say. And I was just like, I'm kind of bored, honestly.
And then you're locked in
him for a minute and get a comic book signed. That's cool. And I did that. But the panel was like, I'm just this.
Man, he was right by my table. He's great. Tim actually got stuck in an elevator with him, I think, and said he was very nice. Like, the guys, he seems to have, he's the template that a lot of us want to follow. You create something your own, and it takes off, and you're able to have a nice retirement from it. And then you go to cons because you just like meeting people that appreciate what you did and want to thank you for it, and ask you a few questions, or just shake your hand, or just say, man, I loved the turtles and I still do. That's honestly, that is a better path than becoming a Marvel or DC artist, because people that I've talked to, they compare it to being like a Disney artist, and now it is, right, because Disney owns them. But when Disney had a large stable of animators, they put them through the ringer. They'd work them like dogs. They put a lot of pressure, a lot of hours.
That would not be my chosen career path as well. I'm not going to probably be a comic book artist, but if I ever pursue it more heavily and tried to go down that route, that would not be the route I would want.
And I'm not saying like I know this for a fact. I just know people who have gone these paths and have worked in these places for a time, and that's what they have to say about it. And they're like, do your own thing. You'll be happier. And, if you don't make money at it, you'll still be happier because it's yours and you decided what to do with it. And you can stop when you feel like it, because your next meal doesn't depend on putting up with being in a sweatshop. Not my words, but that's how it feels to some people. I've had people say being a comic artist sucks as a job, and you only do it because that is what you lived your life trying to do. And now you're stuck with it. But
they don't own their originals, do they? When they say a comic book artist draws a comic book, didn't he own the original pages that he drew?
So I think that has changed. I think that was actually one of the only ways as a comic artist you could make money outside of your standard wage, was by selling your originals. And until recent years, they didn't go for that much unless you were a gigantic name. And even then, it wasn't like you weren't getting $10,000 for a page like Stan Lee or Jim Lee or somebody now would get, Art Germ or somebody like. It was like you can go to a convention and you can sell this, and there was a whole economy of people that traded in just original pages, with a few higher end ones, but it was not how you were going to retire. Nowadays, I think that's still something you get, because, all right, so here is the actual harsh black and white truth. Like, if you work for Marvel and DC and you go to a convention and you were Wolverine's artist for 10 years and you draw a picture of Wolverine and sell it, you don't have the rights to do that unless you were granted it specifically by Marvel. If you did not ask, if you did not get permission, if you did not go through the paperwork to get a license to do it, and I don't know what that entails, but I do know from a story of a former Wolverine artist. He tried selling a sketchbook he made of Wolverine art because that was his thing. And the hammer came down and he was given a cease and desist. So he basically had already sold out, so he just didn't make more. But that's the legality of it. At any point, they can bring the hammer down. And Disney's lawyers are kind of goons that will sue you to die of old age before you get any justice, even if you have it.
Did you see the guy who's getting sued for, he made Lightning McQueen? He made his car to look exactly like him.
No,
and
I didn't hear about this.
Disney's suing him now, and he made the car to take to children's hospitals.
Oh my gosh.
And Disney is suing him, telling him that he has to make the car look different than Lightning. He can't have look, because he's gotten a large enough following on social media that he's starting to make some money from his social media accounts, like his TikToks and his Instagrams.
That's what it is.
That's not the point of like why he made the car. It's just a fact of if you have enough viewers, you get ad revenue on those platforms. So like his options are, if he talked briefly about it and said he can't talk too much about it on a recent TikTok because he has to discuss it with his lawyers first. But his options are literally like, don't be on social media, keep doing what he wants to do with it, or, he can't have the car anymore. And like, literally his whole thing with the car was like, take around to children's hospitals and sick kids and stuff like that and show them Lightning McQueen.
Yeah, so we know what they're like. So if you're an artist, and and
they steal art too.
Disney does?
There was another TikToker who showed it to he had made a tiki god guy, and Disney had a tiki thing that they like had going on. And for one of their like specialty things at their gift shop, it was like this tiki drummer guy. And he showed every cut that he had on his 3D model before he printed it that he had made, where every little nick in the wood is the same, the curvature is the same, down to everything, it's the same. They had hired some other artist to produce this piece for them, and that artist stole his art and put it out there, and Disney was selling it. And he had to send them a cease and desist, and he could not even get any kind of payment, and all they did was take it. Eventually, they did take it down and stop selling it, but they never would comment on it or pay him anything or anything like that.
Ooh, that's ugly. It's not the kind of story you want to hear, but it's a great example.
How many dollars did they make off that?
Oh, I'm sure if they were selling it at one of their places, people just picked it up randomly, thinking, "Oh, this is Disney. It's cool." Yeah. I'm sure they have everything, all their ducks in a row if Disney's doing it, but it's just a corporation for profit. So, Toyota deciding to leave out the pin in the ignition because the 10 cents they would save per car would outweigh the likelihood of lawsuits from it. That's the choice that a business that is for profit sometimes makes. And when you're a business that answers to shareholders, your reason to exist and something you can get sued for if you don't do is to put the share price and the health of the stock of the shareholders first and foremost. And yeah, the reason for that was so that you couldn't just take people's money, take advantage of them, make decisions they wouldn't want, and cause them to lose their investments. But on the other side of it is it now justifies any kind of diabolical act that is even remotely underneath the umbrella of what is not technically illegal. I'm not going to say legal, but not technically illegal becomes justified. So yeah, that way of thinking, like, some things like that on a small scale we live with, and it's not a big deal, and it doesn't affect society as a whole. When you get big enough, the costs and the risks and the justifications get a lot more. They get a lot worse. But
I guess me too. It's just shocking. Like, I would think, it's weird. if I was a company like Disney, I think I would have a few people on my upper echelon that were just there for humanitarian's sake. To just be like, hey, this guy's using Steve McQueen. Should we send him a lawsuit? It goes through this group of people and go like, fuck no, we're gonna look ridiculous.
Well, and so the choice there, like, I know that if you, as I understand legally, if you do not defend a trademark, the value of that trademark diminishes and it becomes easier for other people to use it. But again, if you had someone ethical and interested in Disney's at least good appearance, maybe they should go to that guy and say, how would you like to represent Disney? Here is a
here's a contract. Car at that point.
Yeah, and say, you know, we get some of your take, but at least we, you know, we're in business together, instead of just treating him like he is attacking Disney.
If I was Disney, I wouldn't even ask him for money. I would just be like, hey, to defend our copyrights, we need to certify that this is a Disney Steve McQueen car, and you're free to do with it everything you've been doing with it, as long as you abide by, you know, you don't all of a sudden post a TikTok of like a half-naked chick on top of it or something like that.
Right, they'd have to follow that.
I understand there's that, but
yeah, I mean, you'd clearly put in like their ethics clause and even the shut up on social media clause that has burned Cara Dune and even Pedro Pascal. I mean, Pedro Pascal, I don't remember what he said, but he said something that was considered incendiary, and Disney told him to knock it off. You know, as our representative, we can't have you turning half the country off of our products. And then he stopped. And so he still says stuff, but he doesn't get too political with it. Gina Carano did not stop, doubled down, kept going. And that's why she got fired, because they were like, okay, if we can't control you, we don't want you. And as far as, you know, how the company looks, I can understand that. If you're going to say something that's going to alienate 35% of the country and your potential buyers and people who will go to your movies, it's costing them money. So I see why they have these like ethics clauses or whatever, or even the just shut up on social media clause. If you agree to work for them, and I'm not saying it's right, but if you agree to their terms, you can't be surprised when you violate the terms repeatedly. And
a part of it's common sense too. Like, what's her name that wrote? I know her name, but I just can't think of it right now. That wrote the Harry Potter books.
Rowling.
So I read the comments that Rowling made, and I don't think they are nearly as ridiculous as people are claiming that they are. For the most part, to me, it sounds like she's saying there is somewhat a difference between biological women and non-biological. Biologically, is what I got from reading her posts. Now, maybe I didn't read it right. Maybe I did. I don't know. I'm not saying I did or didn't. But here's my point. When you're that big and that many people's paychecks are coming from you and you're receiving paychecks from other people, you just don't have to talk about it at all on Twitter or in a book or some other space. Like, there's just a point of which you're not Joe Schmo anymore. You're not random person talking to another random person. It's like, I mean, I work at a beef plant. I can get fired for posting a picture at my work or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, and it's going to go to absolutely 5 people. Like, nobody cares. So if there are consequences for me doing random shit, like, of course there's consequences if your name is J.K. Rowling. Like,
yeah, I mean, like the company I work for, it's a healthcare company, and one of their things that they make sure we sign and date that we read and understand is that we're not allowed to talk about their policies. We're not allowed to talk about any information we have within the company on Facebook or, you know, in a public forum, like, because A, could leak something you don't intend to leak. B, could make the company look bad. C, could be misconstrued. D, I mean, there's a ton of things. So they'd rather you just shut up. Now, if they're doing something bad, sue them and say everything that you need to say. But like most of the time, you know, assuming your company is operating in an ethical, legal, or in mostly moral fashion, then you go along with it because that's the condition of your work with them. Now, does that mean that, like, if we applied that to every place of work in America, what does that turn into? I mean, do we think that that's going to silence everybody? I don't think so. I think people are willing to lose their job at, McDonald's or Walmart and I'm not like diminishing those places, but they're places that employ a lot of people, and there are also other options if you leave them. So, it's one of those, like, the more you have to lose, the less likely you are to say stuff that could get you in trouble with that. But, as long as you don't mention the company and you don't mention that you're representing them, then fine. Like, you should still be able to have your opinion and all that. It's just when you are essentially their spokesperson, all the eyeballs are on you, inside the company and out.
It's true. Got to be careful. But back to con stuff.
Right to con stuff.
We went on a tangent, but that's fine.
It happens.
It's kind of con related, kind of. Don't be a tool unless you need to be.
There's a time and place for it, and
unless
sometimes
you're snowed in, then you can be a tool, but you might have to flee the country.
There's a cost for it, and even if I agree with certain things, like, no one in that position is unaware of the cost. So, like, I know that if I say something about Denver Comic Con, I'm hoping that it doesn't like cause too much backlash, because I'm not stating anything that isn't as I know it to be true. And I'm also not like trying to disparage them. I'm trying to keep this thing off here.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to say, like, every convention I've been to has had pros and cons, and there are ways to improve. And if you don't want to listen when people offer you suggestions on how to improve, then there are also consequences for that. I mean, if you want to keep making the same mistakes over again, that's fine. And I get you're not going to listen to every person who's got an opinion on what you should be doing. But if something is a repeated problem and you're not solving it, maybe it's time to look around.
It's true. One more random tangent. Have you ever listened to Snowden talk about what he did or why he did it?
Only a couple of times, and certainly more a few years ago. I don't even know what he's doing now. I don't think he's been extradited yet.
No, but I listened to him for his 2-hour spiel on the Joe Rogan podcast where he went into detail. And the fact that he basically got top security clearance by the most random series of events of people just not knowing what they're doing. It's just amazing to me that happens in the U.S. government. To be it only amazed me so much as to believe that people actually think the U.S. government somehow is keeping the Earth flat a secret. And I was like, dude, Eric Snowden was given top clearance because nobody else knew how to link some systems together, and he got this job because only one other person had the job and retired, and it was in Hawaii, and it happened to be right next door to another group of people, and all of a sudden he was in charge of giving everybody else clearance, so he had to have clearance even though he was not in any remote shape or form qualified to have the clearance that he had.
Wow. I gotta listen to that. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, basically he doesn't even sound like he's I knew a little bit of stuff at the right time and stayed in the business long enough to where all of a sudden I was in charge of granting people clearance, and to be that guy I had to have clearance. And it's and he literally talks about the guy who worked before him, who did his job, just read books all day and clicked a few buttons, and people basically just forgot about him, and he was a one-person office in Hawaii.
Wow.
It cracks me up that people then can hear that story and be like, yeah, they've totally kept it secret that the Earth is flat for ever. No, they haven't.
Oh man, no. I've stopped assuming too much about things working the way that I expect in the government or at the higher levels of corporate culture. A lot of things are just running by based on societal norms and expectations and just fucking winging it. That's all adults are doing. That's all and I say that with gray in my beard and gray in my hair, like we're all just fucking winging it. And some people are better at making it look believable than others.
Winging it, and that these people are crazy. Like, you just have to realize that everything that these, especially like politicians, do is such a stage game. To the point of, I remember Sinbad once talking about how he was on the same flight as this flight with Hillary Clinton, where they went to the Middle East because he was doing some, like, I think it was Sinbad, but he was doing some kind of like, for
Like
the
USO?
troops thing.
USO related? That.
And so he was on the same flight with Hillary Clinton, and all of a sudden they're in the news. It was Hillary Clinton like running from the plane because there was, live munitions fire close to the airport. And so the news clip looks like her getting off the plane, like hearing like gunfire, and like running, and their Secret Service around her. And Sinbad was like, I was the next person off the plane. There was no guns going off. I walked down the stairs casually and walked over to the tents, and there was nothing happening. And this was like an entirely staged thing that Hillary Clinton had staged to make it look like she was in a combat zone. He was like, we were nowhere near a combat zone.
Yeah, there's just the amount of, what would you call it? I mean, stagecraft is a good word for it. That desire to, I get how sometimes you're like, we have a truth to tell and it's not going to come off that way. And the average person seeing this is not going to get it. So let's ham it up so they get it. And there's a difference between that and we're trying to create a narrative and we're going to stage the equivalent of a moon landing. I don't think that was staged. But people can go pretty far. I mean, there's a difference between exaggerating and lying, and they do all of it. And they do all of it. It's hard because there's so many turds in the punch bowl to get a glass with, less turd in it, because you're not getting turd free when it comes to the information.
It reminds me of an old Joe Rogan joke. He's like talking about how much shit has to be in a sandwich before you consider it a shit sandwich. He's talking about how apes are like 99% the same as us on a DNA scale. He's like, but we don't consider them like relatives. He's like, if a sandwich was 99% shit, would you consider it a shit sandwich?
It would take much less for me to go, no, thank you.
0.05% shit is probably enough shit for me.
If I know there is any shit in there, if I know there is a greater than zero amount of shit, and I'm not saying assuming there might be if I'm having a hot dog and there's rat shit in there, or assuming there might be if I'm eating processed meat. Like, I'm saying if I think there's a turd sitting on there, no.
Yeah. Or there even was a turd on there.
Right? So they took it off. It's cool. Yeah. No, it is not. You can keep that.
Yeah.
I'm good.
I don't need that sandwich very much, I decided.
Not that hungry. So I think you had another con question ready to go that we sidetracked from.
Yeah, well, I mean, just getting to know the initial costs is definitely a good first step, because obviously it's something I wouldn't think about either, necessarily. Because I have thought about potentially saying, not for like artwork's sake, for stuff like that, but for like promoting like a podcast and maybe even stickers and stuff together. But you do really got to consider, like you said, there's a lot more costs than you think about. Just like random stuff goes into it. But so all that stuff, let's say you got all that stuff like figured out. What kind of led you to the place you're at as far as like pricing your stuff out goes?
So, and I may have the dates wrong by a year at most, but I think it was 2015. Yeah, 2015 when I went to the first, I believe it was the second Denver Comic Con that I was aware of. I think they had their first big one at the Denver Center for the DCPA or whatever, the Denver Center. I think the first one there was 2014. And someone was telling me the other day that, it had gone longer than that. but I don't think it was in such a big venue and announced as its inaugural year until then. So I went in 2015, and what I did was I went to Artist Alley because I've been an artist since I was a kid. I've liked drawing. I've wanted to be a comic artist. I've wanted to be an animator. I've wanted all these things that people are telling me, like, maybe you don't if you know better, but I didn't. And you know, maybe still don't enough to aim for this. But I went and just went table to table, and I tried to talk to every artist, even if it was just for a second, and just compliment them, say something nice about their work, something that I liked about what they had, because a lot of these were kids. There were kids that were just like, this is their first year at a con, and they're showing their sketchbook that they've worked on for years.
Yeah.
They've put their entire heart and soul into this, and they're just hoping someone will tell them that it was worth the time they put into it. And so that's what I try to do. I try to like go to each person and find something I like about what they do, encourage them, thank them for bringing that here. And there were a lot of tables, and that was like a lot of my day. But what I noticed was that a lot of people weren't exactly sure why they were there. And I don't mean in any way as a disparaging thing, but it's like, you've brought your sketchbook, you've brought the work of your life here. What is in your head the plan? Do you is your hope that Jim Lee comes by, sees it, and goes, shit, we need this kid, hire him, come along? Or Jim Lee comes along and says, hey, that's pretty good, here's my card, why don't you submit to Marvel? Or Jim Lee comes along and gives him a thumbs up. Those are like what I think maybe are going through some people's heads. And then as I would get towards kind of different areas of Artist Alley, and by the way, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. That was my dream, and that was exactly how I envisioned things in my mind when I went to San Diego Comic-Con in 2002 or whatever it was. This is not an insult at all. This is like, what do you think is going to happen, and realistically what your hope is, and even if it's not realistically, just what your hope is. But I saw tables with people like that, some people that were drawing and would look down and couldn't engage with anyone because they're introverts. And this was a big step for them because as an introvert, it's hard for you to put yourself out there. So there's a risk that goes along with that. If someone comes by and craps on your work, like, it's heartbreaking. If someone you value and whose opinion you trust comes and craps on your work or is even dismissive, those things cut deeply. Yeah. And I can say that from experience. But there were people with this kind of mindset of, maybe someone will see what I've done and engage with me and do that part of it. And me being here will put me in the place where that could happen. On the flip side of it, there were artists that had, prints. There were artists that had even just originals up for sale. And they had a nice presentation, and they had like little wire hangers, and they had things all around their table. They had a banner made. They maybe had a sketchbook of original stuff, and they had a few of those printed out to either hand out to people or to sell to people. And I was like, this is kind of more where I'm thinking, because I've already tried. I went to San Diego Comic-Con to meet Jim Lee because I knew he was going to be there. And I took my sketchbook with my blood, sweat, and tears in it. And I was in line to get a evaluation from him because he was looking at portfolios. And I was the last person. They cut the line off right after me. And then they tried cutting it off right before me. And I was like, I came 1,000 miles to be here to see this man for 5 minutes. Can I please have that before he leaves? And so he took a look at my work and tore it apart viciously for like 10 minutes. And he took the best panel that I had on there, and on a napkin that he had, he redrew it. And then he kind of looked at me, and then he folded it up and put it in his pocket. And I was like, oh, come on, man. For all that, you can't even like give me the napkin with the instruction on how to do this right. Did you just like look at my idea, like it, and draw it in Jim Lee style, and you don't want to forget. I mean, I'm putting some, I'm ascribing some things to him that may not be there, but at that moment, I was like not having a super positive interaction. And I'm like, this sucks. This sucks complete ass. And I was heartbroken, and I didn't draw again for a couple of years because my hero had dismissed my work and had been a jerk about it. Now, two things I learned from that. The complaints he had, totally valid, accurate. They're what a professional sees when they looked at my work, and they were things that I needed to get better at. And when I was able to put the pieces of my heart back together, that was the first lesson that I took, and I worked with that. And the second lesson I learned was you never have to be a dick to anybody.
No, there's like, to me, like, say, like, you're going down a street and you're supposed to be going the opposite way. You get to the end of the street, there's like, it's a 4-way, and you're supposed to be in the opposite way, but there's a bunch of different directions you could go. You ask a guy for direction, and he points you down the right side of the street. It goes that way. And you're like, oh, thank you, and you go that way. Or he just beats the shit out of you and walks away. Like, that's the equivalent of what happened there. It's like, you still don't know what the fuck is going on. It just sucked.
Yeah. There's a million ways that interaction could have gone, and he just picked like dick. And
I'm sure part of it is he like probably never wanted to do it in the first place, and like he might
he was
not
trying to
have
leave,
the option, and like, but still, I don't get it. I wonder at what point you get jaded to other people's stuff, because I never even feel that way. Like, I can look at yours and Tim's artwork and a bunch of other people's artwork and say, like, I can see where the difference is on where, like, someone who is getting paid big bucks by Marvel and where your stuff's at. But I still really like your stuff for different reasons. Like, I bought your unoriginal work from you because, like, I liked it, not because I felt bad for you or not because I wanted this other shit. And even I remember, I don't remember who the guy we were talking to, but like at your con, but I told him I like Jeff Lemire's art, and he's like, I know. I was like, how can you not like something about it? Like, he's not like Jim Lee, like the super detailed piece of an artist, but like when I look at other people's art, like the first thing I saw about Jeff Lemire's artwork is it's very simple, it's very toned down, but it also flows impeccably well from panel to panel. There's no extra garbage in it. Like, sometimes when I look at these like Spider-Man books and stuff, I'm like, there's so much background, there's so much shit going on that, if I had that big on my wall, it would look cool. Every panel of it. But when I'm trying to follow what the hell's going on, I'm like, sometimes it's just muddy. And like when I look at Jeff Lemire's work, I'm like, or Matt Kent's work, they're similar in the ways that they do things very stylized, very toned down. There's nothing on that panel that doesn't need to be there. It's very direct. It still is exactly what it should look like to represent what it looks like. And it has like a personal style that's their own, that's not everybody else's. So I'm like, I don't see how you can like see that sucks. Like, still super good to me. But I don't know.
Yeah, everyone's got a different taste for it, and everyone has a different way of dealing with that interaction. You can not like something and go, I can see why people like it. It's not, my favorite, but he puts a lot of work into it, and I can tell. I mean, yeah, you can always find the thing that they're good at, even if it's not something you appreciate. And that's with anything in life. That's like any interaction you have with anybody. But, artists also have like a thinner space between the outside world and the raw nerve of their soul. And it doesn't even apply to just people that draw. I mean, a lot of people have artist souls, and maybe they don't draw, but they do something else. And I think that sensitivity makes you want to express yourself in some way.
Yeah.
And it's also the thing that allows you to get hurt so easily, but it's also the thing that makes you go, oh, I love how this thing turned out. I'm better than I was a month ago, a year ago, 6 months ago.
Get a little bit better. Learn a few different things. It's just, I feel like some people get to a spot where they forget that, like, their entire existence is based on other people's opinions, and like it's super easy to validate someone in a certain way. And it's not just relevant to art. I have a bunch of people that work around me and or beneath me technically, that are good at different things, and there are things that they suck at. And I could harp on the things that they suck at and constantly go after them for them, and it's going to negatively impact the things that they're good at. Or I could just team them up or place them in certain directions or at certain times of the day when it comes to doing this part of the job, that part of the job, to increase the thing that they're good at to get the best result out of them. You know what I mean? And day after day, if they're doing a good job and I'm telling them they're doing a good job, those little things that they're not so good at, I've found naturally start to get better over time as well. Because they're enjoying themselves, they're trying harder, they're feeling respected, they're liking their time at the position. So it's just a natural increase. Like if I go to you and I'm like, I like all the stuff about your work, and say like I'm someone on Jim Lee's stature. I'm not. What's that? I know the parts of your work that need improvement. But if you're going to keep drawing, those things are naturally going to get refined over time. The parts of your stuff that or you're going to be like a random artist who doesn't draw feet well that we won't mention. But
everyone's got their weak points.
I feel like that's pretty rare, though. You know what I mean? Like, if I point out the things, I'm like, hey, this stuff, I like what you're doing here. It could be a little bit more here, or you could focus a little bit more here, but this is a great direction you're heading in. I guarantee you if you respect this guy who's up here enough to go to him for his opinion anyway, the second that he motivates you in that direction, you're probably going home and drawing the first thing that you're doing. You know what I mean? And again, the more you pour into that, the better that other stuff's just going to get, because it has to get, because you're elevating your work by practicing. So to me, I've never understood the like, you suck, you can't do this. It's like, yeah, everybody sucks at certain shit and can't do certain shit. Who cares? Like, everybody's good at other shit. Like, it doesn't matter. I feel like this isn't relating to Jim Lee's. I'm sure there could have been 100 things going on. Maybe he didn't even want to do it and was forced to do it. I don't know. But I feel like it's a weak sign of character and weak leadership. And I think everybody's a leader in some position, whether they know it or not. Even if it's just to the other person that's next to them. Like, your attitude, your demeanor, the way you do things affects the person right next to you. And that's like leadership regardless of if you like it or not. So if you want to have a positive outfit on your environment or your world, to be like that is just so off-putting to me. Like,
and he was, what was this, like 20 years ago? So yeah. People change, people learn.
He was also pretty young then.
Yeah, me 20 years ago, like, you know, that kid had some work to do, you know.
Yeah. 20 years ago, I was probably not where I'm at mentally as I am today as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's the hope, right? If we can't say that we're better than we were 20 years ago, what have we fucked up? You know, where did we go wrong? Because we should be better. Just by living life, we should be picking up enough information to make better choices and to treat people better and to recognize, you know, the value in others. But I mean, that is quite a big tangent. So I'm going to go with, you get your people that are there to like meet Jim Lee and, you know, get picked up and elevated and not have to submit to Marvel 20 times and DC and Image and everyone else and get rejected and not know why, because that rejection stings. So you're just hoping that someone will come and pick up your stuff, or you're hoping that someone likes your stuff enough to pay you for it. And that's where we get into, what is it worth? So what I did that first year, I looked around and I found the art that I liked the most, what resonated to me, what caught my eye.